Welcome to Talent Without Pretense. I'm Gerald, the founder of Reference Me. I spent years working at companies and looking behind the scenes, noticing that there are challenges when a company decides that they need to lay people off. And we know that there's something broken because they've been doing this for such a long time that now everyone is just used to it. So, Talent Without Pretense is about taking off the virtual background and actually giving you an inside view from HR leaders about what it's like for the people who are being let go, the people who are survivors, and also the HR leaders that have to manage all of this. Today's guest is Dr. Hassan Abdul Haqq. He has 30 years of experience leading in the HR financial institutions for nonprofits. He's a doctoral educator at NYU and Columbia, two different institutions, and a two-time HR Executive of the Year. He's been on both sides of workforce reduction. He managed them for decades. And then last August, he was on the receiving end of one. Now, that's a different conversation. So let's get into this. Welcome, Dr. Hassan.
Thank you
Why
very
don't
much.
you give us a quick intro on your background? What do people need to know about you? We want to make sure that they are clearly understanding your background and how you navigate these particular situations. But we'll start with, who is Dr. Hassan?
Excellent. First of all, thank you very much for that question. And I'm going to make it succinct as possible because I can't wait to get into some of your questions. So for the audience. So something quick, call it TMI to more relevant information. So TMI, too much information to more relevant information. So I was born the oldest of nine in a Muslim community. And that was in California. I left California to get to NYU to when I was accepted to NYU and stayed in New York ever since. First job ever was bank teller while going to NYU. So for the first, I would probably say for the first year as a bank teller part-time and going to school full-time, I was able to apply for a management training program. So Citibank at the time was one of the largest banks, global banks. I applied for the role. About 20 folks throughout the U.S. received that position. So in a year and a half, you rotate different departments: finance department, marketing department, HR department. And at the end of that year and a half, you can select any department you want to work in at an entry level. I adored HR. I was nosy, right? So I like to see how much people get paid. I was all up in their business as far as background checks. So I started off as a recruiter. And I will share with you, Joe, that I noticed a huge disparity. And we're talking about well back in an early 90s of compensation. So I
Mm.
said to myself, wow. And I started looking at certain things, right? Look at the years of experience, look at the academic background of the person. And it was extremely disproportionate. So one of my personal goals was, listen, I am not going to let myself be at the back end of compensation or growth because I don't have the education. So I got my bachelor's degree. It was motivated by finance, a master's degree. And then I said, listen, why stop here? And I received my doctoral degree. All moving up into the agency, different HR roles. And then at one point in time, I got tired of every year layoffs. And it was really layoffs after layoffs after layoffs, and people would lose their jobs to get reductions in force. So I said, let me get out of banking and let me get into non-for-profit. Here, the problem with non-for-profit is great mission, great visions, but champagne tastes with beer pockets. So
Mm.
I had to do some teaching. And then I started a consulting job. So I had like 3 or 4 different jobs, all working in different states with different CEOs to help their DEI initiatives, to help people of color obtain and stronger intellectual skills, emotional intelligence skills. I was helping them formulate and set up DEI type programs. Bam, new administration comes in.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it administration, right? New administration comes in. DEI is hit. Anything with DEI focus, right? Or that under that umbrella. NYU hit hard, was all in the news. Then Columbia hit hard. So I went from teaching maybe 4 or 5 classes at each institution to maybe 1 each because courses and classes were eliminated. Okay. Then, any agency that has some federal funding from the government and you have a DEI type focus, especially that you're really honoring LGBTQIA plus types of things and making that forefront of your mission or vision, okay, that was challenged. So
Mm,
as layoffs started happening in a non-for-profit, I was the first executive let go because I was the last one in, last in, first out.
okay.
So that's me. That's what's happening. And that's the most relevant part of I want to share with this audience that's going to be relevant to this conversation. Everything else is we could talk about other things later, but I'm hoping that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. You know what's interesting is I had them as two separate thoughts. Let's
Okay.
talk about how D&I
Mhm.
kind of collapsed and
Mhm.
what does that mean for those who are still in school, trying to get out of school on the educational side. And then I wanted to go deeper into RIFs. But
Mhm.
as you were talking, it just reminded me that this all happened at the same time.
Absolutely.
Right? Like we had a massive change in administration, which also showed us that DNI, all the things that have been put together for all these years, had started to crumble. And then at the same time, we started seeing mass layoffs because let's frankly put it this way, AI has changed the landscape. So now you got rifts and the collapsing of AI happening all at the same time. So my question to you is when you think about the students and those who are actually coming up out of this, growing into the market right now, after they've been through 4 years, 6 years, or even have their doctoral and they can't find a job, what has happened in what you're seeing? And how do you see DNI outside of the administration piece affecting new hires?
A tremendous effect. And this conversation hits close to my heart, not for personal reasons, man, but for people of color, right? I have long had every agency that I've worked with, plus the ones that I was responsible for as head of HR, go directly to HBCUs to get talent, right?
Mm,
I have advocated doing metrics and KPIs, the importance of how many HBCUs have you reached out to, right? Part of your metrics and KPIs, right? I have had good, strong debates on why it's important when you talk about time to hire, and it takes, which is an HR metric, it should take you a certain amount of time to hire for this position. How important it is to extend it when you don't have enough representation of people of color, right? And that's it. I've had my recruiters, Gerald, say, Doc, we gave we gave that hiring manager 20 resumes. And out of the 20 resumes, maybe 7 were people of color and even women. And this manager or this team or this department consistently just hires one set of, of the sector. So I've had those conversations. So now, and we started getting signs, Gerald, 3 years to 4 years before this current administration. When you heard, again, keeping it politically correct, when you had certain states eliminating things out of books and certain textbooks and certain histories, that was our flag saying more to come. Why are you eliminating something? You're saying it didn't happen or was too dramatic. So if that was too dramatic and they have affirmative action programs and areas that we should focus on making sure you have representation there, you also believe that's too dramatic. Everyone is playing on it. No, they're not playing on an equal field, right? So to me, going back to your query, a message has been sent. And when you have agencies, retail agencies, organizations, academic institutions who have to give in to eliminating certain programs and there's no one to stand up, then it's going to be a continual challenge. You have certain agencies and certain organizations and certain retail, again, keeping everything political, correct, that stood up and picketed, boycotted, and things changed, right? It's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So the last thing I'm going to share here with you and to just to fully answer your question is when you look at dismantling DEI offices and eliminating multicultural centers and abandoning equity focused curriculum, you're just not cutting the programs. You're reshaping who gets to see this stuff and who's capable of making some decisions. Now, last thing I'm going to say is remember the two current academic institutions I currently work at, NYU and Columbia. Great institutions, but they're affected by what's happening in the political arena. I've also had the great opportunity to work for a historical Black college, and one in particular, Medgar Evers, where 95% of those folks, the people of color, are definitely affected by some of these things that are happening.
That is just, it's sometimes it's hard to even fathom. So much in your mind, you have to think, could it really be just because of the color of someone's skin? And I know better than that, but you have to kind of get yourself in this mindset that, okay, I need to focus on the skill side. But when there's so much against you and it's so blatant, you tend to start thinking in every conversation, did this happen because of the color of my skin? Was it because of the value that I provided? We we always find ourselves asking that second question versus if you weren't in this situation, you wouldn't even be thinking about it. And how freely can you go about the world when you're not even asking that second question?
And Gerald, and you and I can talk for days on this topic. People say it's, oh, stop playing the race card. I hear that often and cringe. I cringe. But take a look at when you hear theories about 40 acres and a mule, when you hear about reparations, when you hear these things, why was it even talked about? Because you're not playing on an equal playing field. You don't have uncles and grandfathers and grandmothers giving you money. You don't have a long history of people who've gone through college and universities who can help you. You're in most times economically challenged communities where you are scared to even say that you were in school and doing well, right? Your parents can't help you with some homework. You're not getting any tutors. You don't have an au pair. So those things are critical. Another conversation. I'm in my classes and I'm hearing things like, Doc, I can't wait for the semester to be over. Where are you going? I'm going to be home, to me as a professor. Where are you going? Europe. I'm going to Italy. I'm going to France. Okay, at one or two universities. Go to my HBCUs, right? What's happening in the summer? I'm going to pick up another job. Some things I have to going on. I'm trying to get me a car. These things. So you said, what does that have to do with anything? That has a lot to do with it, right? So when you start another semester over and you've had a long, wonderful vacation, your energy level, your excitement, you're thriving to be there. But when you have had some challenges over the summer and you're working two or three jobs and you're in a stressful environment, the energy level, the direction and the focus is not there,
Yeah.
right? And we have multicultural programs in schools to help this population that's now being eliminated.
Mm, totally. You're 100% right. We could definitely spend all of our time for years talking about the different infractions that cause people not to be able to be seen the same way as others. However, I want to jump into one other thing. I want you to take us back to what some of the signs that we were talking about were external, right? What's happening in the books when they're removing content, or of course, a new administration. But what I want to do is I want to dive into you're in the room and the information that comes to you that we now have to do a reduction in force. I wanted to get from your perspective what was happening, what was the people's sentiment, how did you feel when you started getting that information? I'm curious if you feel like there was enough time for you all to make the right decisions, or was it a totally different scenario? So pick any one of the situations in which you were in the room behind the scenes. And I'm curious to help us understand what that sentiment looked like.
So I'll pick the first one. So as an HR practitioner, right? I've been in the rooms, Gerald. I've seen how RIFs, reductions in force decisions were made. I'll tell you that they will tell you, folks will say it was based on data, right? It's not definitely based on data because it's also absence of culture. Is also absence of anything else that can be subjective. So you said, well, we should be objectives. But listen, if your work, your RIFs are affecting more than 70% people of color, be it because again, you're looking at certain data points and you're not looking at everything, then we should take a step back and look at other ways of doing this, right? So as a strategist, right, you look at to be strategic about this. Organizations are making workforce decisions right now based on a 12 to 18 month financial horizon, and you're affecting the talent. No, you're looking at things that can be damaging for the agency, damaging for the community, and damaging for your customers. Because our companies should be looking at the effects of this, not just on the financial effects, but also on the culture and the remaining employees. Last thing I'm going to say here, and I'm going to wait for additional question from you, is I like to use analogies when I'm speaking. So, what did Obama do for people of color? People have a lot of different arguments. Here's what I've been researching, and here's what I've seen personally and many of my colleagues. It gave people hope. It gave people hope. Definitely people of color hope. What? A man of color as a president? And look at his name,
Yeah.
right? So what I'm saying to you is your decisions, things that are happening, you have to really be conscious of the decisions because and how it affects others, not just financially, but the culture of an agency or an organization.
Yeah. That's even speaks to the survivors, right? What happens with the people who are left? What changes in the culture as a result of a riff? So let's go ahead and use our minds to kind of talk into, all right, it happened. The situation is not great, but how do we move on from now the reduction has happened? What should those people do and how should they be supported? What is HR thinking about when they decide that these people actually have to be let go? What services have you seen in the past that actually tries to support them? Now, a lot of companies don't. They just let them go and they have to go fend for themselves. But I would love to hear from your perspective. What have you seen as a way to be able to support those employees when this actually happens?
So we can go to the basics where you have some severance packages, some small severance packages that'll hold you over for a couple of months, right? While you try to find a job, right? Then we can go to some agencies who are a little bit more concerned with the RIFs and they have placement agencies that help your employees get placed, right? Dealing with the displacement of losing their job, even from an emotional standpoint. So they some do that as well. Then you have some agencies where the HR department internally help folks look for jobs, help folks get their resume ready, help folks do the same thing like the placement agencies do, help folks tighten up certain things and give them some personal one-on-one career advice. So that's key. I will share this with you, Gerald. One of the things that I have done successfully and I will continuously do every day, not just in the books that I write, but in the conversations and the keynotes that I do, is we must continuously build our brand. We must continue to get educated. We must continuously build our resume. We must really take a look at relationship building. And right now, LinkedIn, I'm going to use LinkedIn as a plug there. I don't get no money for this. LinkedIn is a great way of trying to reach out, to get to know people, to build connections and networks. That's important. You had mentioned something, I'm not going to get into it unless you want to talk about it some other time, is the use of AI. The use of AI to build your own websites, the use of AI to help you build a strategic plan, the use of AI to tell you what are some of the gaps in some of things that you have on your resume that you should be focusing on. Where can I continue this education in this particular area? What can I do? AI, let's start using AI.
Mhm. Absolutely. I love that segue. So, as many of you may already know, my company definitely focuses on that latter part where when you lay someone off, you want to be able to give them the best possible experience as they are being shared with a new company. And the reason why that's important is because they weren't the cause of the riff, right? The riff was probably a business decision or an organizational decision in which they no longer had funds to be able to do these things. So now there was a contract that was initially created that I thought I would have stable employment. And now all of a sudden that contract is broken pretty much abruptly. And so what we do at Reference Me is we do exactly what you're saying. We want people to realize that they are a brand. And a lot of us haven't spent time building that brand. We were so comfortable working for a specific company. The only people that know us and our accomplishments were inside the company, but nobody outside the company knew who they were. That's why having Black authors, having people who are sharing information, now that we have the proliferation of YouTube channels and podcasts like this one, we're able to actually express more of our information. And frankly, like what you and I are doing right now is really where they need to be. They need to be able to share from their expertise the things that they were able to achieve so that more people can actually get access to it. And so on the surface, that sounds good. but to actually do it is a whole different thing. I
Indeed.
met so many leaders that don't have publications yet. And I'm like, hey, you've been in the industry for 25 years and I can't find anything online about what you've accomplished. Even if you did major projects within the company, it's now time to actually express your brand. And then on the other side is since the company has broken the contract, well, they should be partnering with companies like Reference Me, of course, that will take these employees and give them a good footing to stand on. We call it soft landing, in which we help them with their interviews, we help them with their collecting references, we help them with branding, we help them actually stand out, not by fabricating data, but actually just accentuating the things that they already have. And yes, we know that there's a step function. I always say there's no such thing as lateral employment anymore. If you were in this level doing work at a particular company, don't expect to get the same level at a new company without updating your skills. There needs to be a step function. And so we also drive with helping people understand how they can use AI to increase that step. But something you said earlier just really resonated with me because when we think about the Black experience, right now, there is a lot of talk about using AI and engaging in AI, but AI will start to get more expensive. And the minute it gets to the place where it's not free or it's not able to sustain this notion of everybody's trying this out, well, then what happens to the people who don't have access to AI to be able to learn it and actually grow with it? It will create another large gap between those who had the understanding to go after it now versus those who just don't have the resources. I mean, some people, frankly, they don't have an iPhone, they don't have Android, they go to the library in order to use the computer. What do we do with them when they don't actually have access to AI like others? So I'm curious from that perspective and from the perspective of our students, what do you think we can do to actually help support them?
Excellent. So I'm going to take a step back before I answer your question. And it's because you hit it when you, in your reflection just now, right? So my father, mother, rest in peace, used to say, and I carry this, what I'm going to say every single day. I've said this to my two sons. I'm a 19-year-old Marcus and my 22-year-old Darius. Be the best or be amongst the best at everything you do. So if you're not the best, you're amongst the best, right? Every time that you do something, you should be leaving a mark. You should be building relationships, right? So you also said something too, Gerald, that I was like, wow, right? History has never been kind to those who choose comfort over courage, right? So just because you're comfortable and you're good, you should always be seeking growth,
Mm,
always be networking, right? You're absolutely correct. And again, you talk about small signs we have to observe. Let's use Chat GPT. Let's use Claude as some examples, and I'm trying to think of others. They were strictly free. They're still strictly free for a certain time period, but now you have to pay for the better features of it. And now that everyone started going to use it, it's like supply and demand.
absolutely.
What's going to happen? So it's going to get even higher. So what I'm saying to you is, all right, so what do we do with that? What do we do with that? First of all, notice the signs, notice what's happening, continue to network. And I'm going to say something that's a little odd, a little strange. Your friends, your family, your significant others, and people in your circle, find out if you can work with them and piggyback off of some of their services as well. Corny analogy, right? Netflix, right? Things like that. You share Netflix, or you try to, and they're trying to change it. Utilize people around you, right? And again, there's ways around things and never just settle. Very, very important to answer your question. So that's what we're going to have to do, Gerald. When you talk about as things change, we must change. I
Yeah.
take the course, one of the courses that I taught a while ago is a course on change. What happened? Remember Blockbuster?
Yeah.
Didn't change, right? Kodak didn't change, right? So we have to change. Notice the signs and change. If you see that programs, going back to your earlier question, programs are starting, at least for this term, starting to be cut. What else can I do to make myself more marketable? What else can I do to roll with the change? Because I must change. I may have to do another side hustle that's going to be more marketable on my resume. You heard what I'm doing, and I heard some of the things you're doing. I'm teaching, I'm consulting, while still looking for something that's going to be what I consider value added role because I'm not going to accept anything. Very similar.
Absolutely. And I think that that's just incredible advice. Over the years, I've learned that the primary thing or the principal thing is how you leave people when you make an impression with them.
Sure.
If you're not building relationships, and usually that comes by how much you give. See, most people would think is about how much they're getting from the relationship, but you need to be the one that's the giver. So if you're willing to give and to share, you will build community and build relationships. But if you're someone who's only interested in taking, then you will miss the mark of actually building the deepness in the relationship that will be beneficial for you in the future. So that's just something that I want to share. I always say, don't give just to get, give to give, right? The getting comes because you're not doing it for the purpose of just trying to get something. You're doing it because you truly want to support someone. So that's definitely a snippet that I like to share.
Well said. I like that. I like
I
that.
wanna I wanna jump into something that I know that you have experience with, and I when I was doing my master's, I had experience with this too, and that was dealing with the administration and trying to actually do my capstone and get research and things like that. I heard something recently that people who are going for their doctorates need to be very careful about how they present their research because some of the administration would actually take their research as their own. I am curious. Have you seen that rhetoric in when people are actually going out for their doctorates and how they have to be careful now about certain things because professors may actually, I'm going to say professors, but the institution will somehow take their work and then use it for their gain without even giving credit to those who are actually building those things.
Indeed, you're right. You're right. I've seen and don't want to be too dismal, but I didn't have to deal with too much of that in 2007 when I had my PhD, right? Right now, it's a lot different. So when you talk about the citations, be it MLA, APA, everything is supposed to be cited and credit given to the author. However, the concepts that you're talking about can be taken and used. And until it's published, it is free reign. Anyone can use it and take it until it's published, right? Then you have a legal back, a legal stance to try to get compensated for someone who takes some of your work. But you're absolutely correct. Right.
Mm,
And the only way to is not even only way to get around it is it's hard. I couldn't even share with you how to get around it because again, and these days though, Gerald, you talk about AI and you talk about technology. It's hard to really take an entire idea from someone and build it as your own.
mm,
It's hard. It's hard to do so. Can I tell you? And at the academic institutions that I'm with we have certain programs that an extreme database, especially at these Ivy League schools, where you put papers through, you put dissertation through, you put thesis through, and you look for, and it spits you back where it came from was the originator. So from a technology standpoint, you're sort of protected. But like
yeah.
I said earlier, there's ways around just the idea.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Like I said, it's one of those questions that a lot of young people are asking too, because they come up with these great ideas and they're like, well, how do I protect it? I don't have money to pay for patents and all these things. So they're curious as to where they are. And my daughter is actually in that space. She's doing biomedical at Virginia Tech.
Go ahead.
And
Good.
she just finished her one of her projects, and the professor literally said, "This is such a great project that we're not going to share it."
Mm.
Not until we actually be able to get it fully protected. Isn't that something? So that's what they're telling our young people, and my daughter is interested in going to get her PhD as well. So it was just a timely conversation where I heard that. One of the areas that I I learned about you when my team actually did research about you, and it's really remarkable, is you have a very big media presence on LinkedIn, which is the area where you have billions of people in the system. You have over 20,000 followers, and LinkedIn's algorithm has changed many times, but that is still a wonderful listener group who are interested in the things that you share. You want to share with the group here, like, what was your journey to 20,000 LinkedIn followers? And then the other thing that I'll add on top of that, and this will kind of be our last question, is when you think about the future of a doctoral program similar to what you're doing, what do you think are some of the hurdles that our students are going to have to overcome as they are trying to walk their way into getting their doctorates academically.
Mm, okay.
So the
So
first one was how did you build your LinkedIn brand?
I got you. Got you. So can I tell you? I'm always telling TMIs too much information. So every other year, I get the opportunity to work with a group of very hardworking, intelligent group of folks who were either my previous students during my doctoral, doing their doctoral program or master's program, and they want to work on my HMA consulting team just for experience or anything, and they get from me how to build a brand. They get from me how to network, right? And they get to see that business side of my consulting piece. To answer your question fully, I actually was head of HR at this global group, and then we can say it is a positive thing, FedCap at the time. And my recruiters, I had them go to LinkedIn at least once a month so LinkedIn can share. This was well over 10 years ago. LinkedIn can share some of the technologies and upcoming tools. And I would go with them. And then, so that helped me understand LinkedIn. So I wanted to understand LinkedIn. And as from a recruiting standpoint, then teaching, Gerald, teaching at several different universities, I started incorporating on every one of my classes the importance of your career and growth. I would say, listen, you or your parents, somebody is paying a tremendous amount of money for all of this knowledge and intellect. It is worthless if you walk out of here and you don't have a network, you don't have people that you can ask questions to or look into. And LinkedIn, I made them build their LinkedIn profiles,
Mm,
made them connect. In every one of my classes, I don't care if it was finance, HR, strategy, leadership, every one of my classes. And of course, mine grew. Then my consultant, when I started traveling, at the end of my workshops, hundreds, 200s, over thousands of people, I would have my LinkedIn up and I would say, before you leave these next 2 days, wherever we are, Florida, Europe, UK, wherever, your goal is quiet. To make sure you link up with at least 5 people you have never met on LinkedIn.
mm.
And right now, as of today, I am number 8 in the USA individually, not these corporations have the biggest following on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love the pay it forward idea
Yep.
too, to
Yep.
make sure that other people can also grow. All right. So what do you tell doctorate students now? Now that you have this experience, you've seen both sides, they're interested in going into getting a doctorate. What do you tell them now?
It's hard work. I tell them it's hard work, like everything else. You heard our parents say, if it's not hard, it's not worth it.
Mm,
Struggle is not worth it. There are less than 8% of the people in our society with a doctor, with a doctorate degree. 8%. I want to be part of that. But then I say, be the best or amongst the best? Yes,
yeah.
sir. Right?
All right.
And anything before your name or after your name that says Dr. Gordon, Dr. Gerald,
Yeah.
stand up. They look a little bit more. What? They're going to ask some questions, right? So then you're talked about more. You're looked at more. You're observed more. You're listened to, right? So anything that's going to set you aside, here's a corny analogy because I use analogies in my teaching.
Hmm.
It's like stripes. How many stripes you got? You got
Right.
4? I got 4 stripes. That's what's happening, right? You're credible. In their eyes, you're more credible. You've
Mhm.
done more research, 2, 3, 4, 5 more years of education.
Yep.
You're more marketable.
Yeah.
So it's hard work, like everything else, but it pays at the end.
Absolutely love that. All right. So, Hassan, you came into this conversation with 30 years of experience and you brought something most guests can't do, looking at things from both sides. In addition to that, we talked about D&I, we talked about people's stories, we talked about severance, we talked about the effect of how this collapse in education for people who may not have the same skill sets or opportunity to information, how it affects them. We had an honest conversation about what happens behind the scenes when a rift happens and when DNI collapses. And I just want to thank you so very much for coming on and giving us your expertise. And so until next time, when we talk about talent without pretense, catch us on YouTube and LinkedIn and all these different areas where we'll share these episodes. But we really enjoyed having you join us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.